It's absurd how much I love Journey Spice. Journey Spice, non-GMO, no salt, no sugar, just all sorts of goodness and smart, environmentally friendly packaging. Pinch the top, take it off. Food tastes better. Comes in singles, 2-packs, and 4-packs. It's Journey Spice. Find them at Amazon.com. Time for Denver's best sports talk with the Altitude Daily.
This is the Altitude Daily Podcast. Everything you can't miss from today on Altitude Sports Radio. Mosher, Lombardi, and Kane.
In my humble opinion, and I've said this from the get-go, I think this is a more hands-on approach by Josh Kroenke. Josh Kroenke will have the ultimate say here.
He said as much, that he's going to be more hands-on.
I wonder if he felt like, you know what? I trust Calvin Booth and I trust Michael Malone. I'm going to keep my nose out of it. Right? Unless there's something big that's coming down the pike, unless it's a huge trade or whatever, I'm going to keep my nose out of it. I'm going to let them do their jobs, so on and so forth. And then he goes, you know what? It just got away from me because these two guys couldn't get along. It became an absolute pig mess, and it was disastrous on both sides.
Can you explain something to me?
If that is the case, I don't blame him at all because you can let people do their jobs, but if they can't do their jobs with the other guy, then you got to fix it.
So just to compare and contrast, if you go to the Avalanche side of
I was just gonna ask Moj. Yeah,
Chris MacFarland is making personnel decisions. Joe Sakic overlooks everybody.
Correct.
So Chris MacFarland has a personnel decision. He has an idea. He goes to Joe Sakic. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's how it works there.
But does anything happen without Sakic's stamp on it? Like, can
not
MacFarland,
the big stuff. I'm sure.
MacFarland, could he have made a Mikko trade if Sakic was like, no?
No, I think that's
okay.
Obviously that's run up the flagpole for everybody. Yeah.
Okay, could they sign a guy for a $1 million contract without Sakic's approval?
Probably
okay.
so.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think there's a certain amount of understanding on what you need to knock on the door for and what you don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm sure that's pretty much the case. And then if you're talking about the big stuff, look, Joe Sakic's going to go to the ownership and say, this is what we're going. I mean, when you're talking about millions of dollars having to be shelled out for players and gigantic contracts and all this kind of thing, I think the guys who own the team want to kind of be sure what's going down. I think that Josh Kroenke, I think that they think, okay, obviously they're more basketball people than hockey people anyway, but I think that Josh Kroenke talked about the responsibility when he was talking in the news conferences about the Joker years. He is fully squared away, and I mean absolutely cognizant of how important this time in this franchise's history really is. You're not going to get this opportunity ever again, not with a guy like this. So you've got to really hyper-focus, and I really appreciate that about the understanding that, but again, I hope this is the right way, but they understand we've got to maximize what we've got with this guy.
The Altitude Daily, the morning sprint.
He essentially took two people that he thinks are really, really competent, intelligent, but also most likely because of the issues that existed between at least Michael Malone and Calvin Booth interpersonally and getting along and coming to some form of consensus. He believes that Ben Tenzer and John Wallace are the perfect guys to be able to work together.
You also, I think having more voices in the room, if you are Josh Kroenke and you're making more active decisions, right? This is what this feels like. Josh Kroenke will make more active decisions in terms of how this team operates.
Big ticket items.
Yes. But actually saying, hey, I think this would work, or not just being the guy who writes the checks. Is he going to be Jerry Jones? No. But it's certainly more active than I think this is more active than the Broncos ownership is in terms of player personnel. Does that feel correct?
Yes.
After everything that we've heard in the presser after both Booth and Malone were fired, after the season, this is a more front-facing ownership group of we are going to be actively involved with what happens day to day with this team.
It's a weird slogan here, but it's something that it's stuck with me since I was a young coach, where I got my first coordinating job at Boise State. And I started kind of divvying out responsibilities and delegating some things here and there, like, hey, red zone, Eli Drinkwitz, he'll be in charge of the red zone. He's now the head coach in Missouri. Junior Adams, who's now the receiver coach at the Dallas Cowboys, you're in charge of third down. I'll never forget Brian Harsin, the head coach, the guy who was he was Bo Nix's quarterback coach. This is Bo Nix's last year at Auburn. He looked at me one day and said, hey, you got to be careful about how many things that you give out, because ultimately when your name's on the line and your name is on that offense, the quote he said, my ass, my hands. My ass is on the line. My hands better do the work. And I think to a certain degree that goes into what Josh Kroenke is doing here, where ultimately he did put himself out there and say, I'm going to be more intimately involved with this. Therefore, my hands are going to be more actively involved in all the different areas of decision-making. I just want to get really competent, good people to be around to be able to have the conversations that we need to be able to get the information, the data that I need to make decisions.
The Altitude Daily. Columbus, Hastings, and DMAC.
How did Oklahoma City do it? So now we turn around. How did Oklahoma City do it?
I guess I'd have to ask you. I don't really know.
Well, I'll throw this out there. Would you consider, and I know he just got traded again to Houston, or will be once July 1st starts, Kevin Durant, a big name?
Of course.
Moved him for picks.
Yeah.
Basically. Paul George, big name?
Of course.
Moved him for picks and Shea Gilgeous.
Okay, so who's our guy?
Well, the point being, now, if they're the model, those 4 jerseys that we're giving away a cool contest for, if you're Oklahoma City, those 4 guys on your team next year?
I'm sorry, meaning their 4 or our 4?
No, if this was Oklahoma City, we're going to run things like Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, they've traded Russell Westbrook. They refused.
Well, I don't know. I might disagree with you because I think you're implying that they'd get rid of somebody. I don't think they're getting rid of anybody.
No, I understand that, but if you were doing the model of Oklahoma City
to get to where they are,
to get, wouldn't that say that? Listen, they've gotten rid of Durant.
Yeah,
they refused to sign Harden and moved him. I think they signed and traded him too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but the problem was you're talking about guys that were much easier to trade. I just don't know how that applies to the Nuggets. Who is easy to trade? Jamal Murray is not easy to trade. Michael Porter Jr. is not easy to trade. Aaron Gordon might be easy to trade. I don't know, but I don't want to get rid of him. The only 2 guys that I would even consider getting rid of are Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., and I don't think either one of those guys are an easy deal to get done.
How did they get rid of Durant?
But I think that was easy because he's Kevin Durant, and people want Kevin Durant.
No, I understand. But listen, all 4 of those guys you can get rid of. I mean, if you needed to trade, if you really wanted to, you're going to find a way to do that.
Sure.
But the point being, they looked at it as an asset, and I guess here's my long way to look at it. And I had a GM tell me this a long time ago. As a general manager, player personnel director, whatever they call the positions now, chief basketball operations, whatever it is,
boss man,
governor, boss man, whatever it is. Can't fall in love with your players. Like your players, respect your players, treat them well, but they're not your friends.
Right.
And I'm not so sure the last regime here wasn't too close. I think, and I'll be honest with you, I think Tim Connelly will have an issue in Oklahoma or in Minnesota, because I think the guys he's got on this team right now, he's close to.
Well, the interesting part about that is if that's true, if that was an issue, it would be much easier to create a separation of church and state if you would have gone outside the building for the GM, if you would have gone outside the building for the head coach. But you didn't do that. You promoted guys from within for both head coach and, well, whatever the GM role is. You promoted those guys. So technically, they might have been a part of the previous deal.
John Wallace was in Minnesota. I mean, he started here as an underling years and years ago. But he is coming from Minnesota, spent the last 2 or 3 years in Minnesota from learning with Tim, who, listen, it also shows they have high respect for Tim Connelly and what he did here.
He was here, though, also, right?
He was here early in his career, yeah. But I think when Tim went over, John went with him then, if I'm not mistaken. But he's not been over here. I think he's been out of here since they won a championship.
The Altitude Daily. Kretman and Lindahl.
You know, it's Josh's franchise, I still think, as we know, Stan Kroenke still has great interest in this. And
Yes.
so I just wonder, have we gone back to this so that there's more a pulse on, are we getting along in the front office?
Mm-hmm.
Are we getting along between coach and the personnel guys?
Right.
Is there just more people in the room so we don't, at least, I'll tell you what, with two VPs, not GMs, but two VPs.
Executive VPs.
Two executive VPs, and now David Adelman, you've got three people. There's an automatic tiebreaker if that's what you need. Maybe that's what they were looking for. I don't know.
I'm not opposed to there being several voices in the room. I'm not opposed to numerous different smart people hashing things out, disagreeing with one another, hopefully airing those disagreements in a respectful platform and then arriving at a good decision for the organization. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that, Tim Connolly, when he had Arturis in the room, when he had Calvin Booth in the room, he was always surrounded by good people. And one of the other things that I think is critical to remember about all of this is like, okay, this is how I envision it right now, is I kind of see it as like the very top of the pyramid. There is Josh Kroenke at the very top, and then here are the two branches off to them. Here's Tenzer on the money side. Here's Wallace on the basketball side, and their respective staffs below all of that. But something to take into account here is nothing major ever happened with this organization without somebody with the last name Kroenke signing off on it.
Exactly.
So in that essence, it really hasn't changed all that much. What I'm curious about is with Josh Kroenke having admitted during, his two press conferences that he has already held, I need to put more focus on this team right now. I need to spend more time with this team. His own admission that the way the dynamic failed between Booth and Malone was on him, that he did not have enough oversight to all of that. I guess the biggest question I have going forward is, in the day-to-day, if Josh Kroenke is busy with Arsenal or Elitch's or whatever he may be involved in on that afternoon, whatever it may be, is there somebody that can just, quick, boom, okay? We got an issue with the player. We got an issue with a... Because GMs, it's not just roster building. You're the bosses. You kind of run the thing. Who can solve things very quickly around there? And is there going to be a singular voice in that? Or is it just sort of going to be like, well, you emailed the wrong guy?
You've been listening to The Altitude Daily. Catch us live weekdays on 92.5 FM, the Altitude Sports Radio app, twitch.tv/AltitudeSR, youtube.com/Altitude Sports Radio, and your favorite smart speaker. Say Altitude Sports Radio.